it just did not look right. So I stopped. Danny kept walking a little higher up, and I finally went up to join him. Like, again, it's really dark, and we didn't hear anything until we heard a voice right in our ear. Gentlemen, you're going to jail. So,
Today we've got with us Blair MacKenzie Blake. Most people will know Blair from the Tool website. He's been there for literally decades as the content manager and writer. But Blair is very multi-talented. He's also been a keyboardist in a prog rock band. He's written for Dark Law because he has an encyclopedic knowledge of Fortean topics, esoteric topics. He's done a non-fiction book, Wickedest Books in the World, about his Crowley collection, which we will talk about in this interview. He's also just recently written 3 novels, fiction novels, which sort of draw on all his esoteric knowledge, The Othering, The Paragon Junk, and Grumble Star. And we'll also talk about them because I found them fascinating. But first off, just welcome, Blair.
hello, glad to be here.
I thought we'd start off today just with what most people know you from, probably, which is your association with the Tool website. I'm just wondering how you ended up working the website for basically one of the biggest bands in the world. Like, what was your journey to get to that point?
Okay, well, when it started, they weren't one of the biggest bands in the world, I think. But actually, I had met Danny through a mutual friend, and I got to be friends with him. And, I think what we had in common was, as you mentioned, I was in a progressive rock band. So progressive rock music was that was our bonding over that. And I didn't even know he was a drummer. I mean, then when I found out he was a drummer that just moved from the Midwest, I was thinking, boy, there's like hundreds, thousands of drummers out here in Los Angeles. I don't think this guy is going to be here that long. And then, because Danny was so modest. I mean, he's one of the most modest people. He's just so humble. And then I finally got to hear him play, and the first thing I heard him play was the song "Tank" by Emerson, Lake and Palmer with the drum solo in it. He played it to perfection, and I was like blown away. And I thought, maybe this guy will be here for quite a while. But in those days, when they did the first 2 records, they did Opiate and Undertow. Danny he downplayed all that for me because he didn't think I would like it. He didn't think I would like the music. I'm a prog snob. I like classical music. All my CDs were classical. He didn't think. So even though I saw the band, like when they got signed, I saw them when they signed with their record deal, their manager. So I saw them in the small clubs. Mm-hmm. But I never went to the bigger shows, like when they did Lollapalooza, when they started to get their following. And mainly because, I don't know, Danny just he didn't tell me not to come, but he didn't tell me to come either. So anyway, with Tool, it was Adam really that asked me to do this, not Danny. I think a lot of people think this was Danny, but Danny really didn't have anything to do with it. It was Adam. And they wanted me to do, and this was 25 years ago or longer, so I'm a little hazy on it. But I did something like a newsletter they asked me to do that I think was kind of like a parody of the band or of I don't know. I can't even remember. But anyway, Adam liked it because the way it was overwritten. He liked that. And so he said, you should do our newsletters. And I said, well, I think you find somebody better because, the music, it's not my thing. And he said, no, we don't want these newsletters to be about our band. Everybody does it. We want it to be about what you're interested in and subjects that we're interested in, the various band members. They have a lot of, diverse interests. So I said, well, okay, that's getting better. I'll give it a shot. I said, I'd probably only do 2 or 3, they were monthly. So I'll do it for a couple of months, 3 months, and then until you find somebody else. And Adam said something like, "No, you'll just keep doing it. You'll never run out of ideas." And I was thinking, "Yeah, right." And but anyway, 25 years later, there's still some semblance of that.
In terms of just returning back to, you said like it was Adam that got you on board
Uh-huh.
more than Danny, but
Mhm.
really like you and Danny kind of partnered up in many ways through your love of the occult, or probably more correctly, you like rekindled his love of that. I think
Yeah,
like
well,
he's
a
written
better
about
word
that.
would be our interest in it, I would think.
Yeah.
Um, because there's a lot of wacky stuff that goes on in that world too. So
Hmm.
you got to be really level headed. But well, book collecting. I started out collecting the first editions of Aleister Crowley. Tonight here, you're in the future, but it's Crowley Mass.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It's his birthday. I don't know how old he would have been. He was born in what, 1975, I think. 1875, I mean.
1875. Yeah.
Yeah, 1875. But anyway, Danny thought it was kind of crazy for like spending that paying this amount of money for a first edition book. He thought, wow, that's. But then he got really interested in it, and then after a while, we were competing, but not like in a bad way at all. It was like, he would gift me a book every once in a while if he found he had two of them. I did the same for him. I gave him a first edition Blue Equinox.
Hmm.
Uh, and anyway, there came a point for me, because obviously I don't have the money, I mean, that he has. So he could go continue to pursue the ones that were out of my reach. But I helped him find them. I would look for them. I took a lot of interest in doing that. And I don't really look for books anymore today because I can't afford the ones that I would need. They're on a different level now. The ones that are
How
really
much has that changed from when you started in like the 80s? I think it was. Now
It's
with
changed a
eBay
lot.
and
It changed a great deal because we first of all there were a lot of bookstores, brick and mortar bookstores, and things would just wind up in the bargain bins and things like that. Now everything is, you know, if if a book dealer seller gets a Crowley book and he doesn't know what it is, he doesn't just put it on the shelf. He'll look it up online and
Mm.
he'll have this whole world at his fingertips and be able to figure out what the price is. But
yeah,
back in the 80s when we were doing this, that didn't there was no reference. They didn't know, there was no place for them to go really to find out what these books were worth. So only the really sharp dealers knew. So we got a lot of our best stuff at really, but today would be considered incredible prices
yeah,
back then. And back then there were book fairs. That was a great place to find books. They just don't. You think like, okay, you almost have access to every bookseller in the world through like the Advanced Book Exchange or some of these other the e-landscape, but it doesn't. The books are really rare. They don't turn up. I mean, I've been looking for some books for 20, 30 years, and you just never see them. I mean, I
yeah.
look every day for two UFO books that I don't have, and they're the only ones I really want. And
Which
I just
ones?
every morning I do. I'm sorry.
Which ones are you looking for?
Oh, I don't want to give out what they are because somebody will find them and then they'll ask a gazillion dollars for it. But I'll tell you this: they're both by Gray Barker,
Mm.
and they're both what would be considered probably junk. They're very, very just trashy things. But I get up every morning and I have my coffee and I go through online to look for these books, these two books that I just cannot find.
Mm.
And
I suspect that maybe my friend Greg Bishop has them. He has a huge, huge collection of
he
very
may have
rare
them.
UFO books. Yeah.
I will, but he's probably going to want to hold. The book is so rare, he'd probably want to hold on to it himself. I mean, I have probably about, I don't know, some 850 or more UFO books,
Mm.
vintage ones. So I have pretty much everything. I mean, the Vantage Press are really hard to find.
Hmm.
Uh, those books, they were what books that the author would just pay to have print. Vanity Press is what it was. and they're really hard to find. I found those. I have everything by Gray Barker, just about, except these two little books that he did. They're not even really like hardcover books or anything. They're like pamphlets.
Hmm.
But if I were to give out the names, then I would then somebody would have it, and they would they jack the price up or whatever. So, but maybe I will have to do that someday because I just never find the book.
Yeah.
How did you get started? I know. I think I've read in the Wickedest books that you kind of started with trading cards when you were a kid, and then you've ended up collecting Crowley books instead.
Yeah, there's I guess there's in your DNA being a collector or whatever. My dad was a collector. He was a coin and stamp collector. But, he would just, I wasn't interested then. But when I was like in, I don't know, maybe the fourth grade, do the math for the age, I'm not sure. I started collecting baseball cards, but I also wanted the real early ones, like the 1909s, the Ty Cobbs, and there were like card collector clubs back in the day. So whenever it was my birthday or something, instead of that's what I wanted, I wanted, and these cards were like 50 cents, $1 each back in the mid 60s, which seemed like a lot. So, but now they're worth thousands. But so what I did is I collected. I had a big collection, and then I started selling that I sold it probably too soon, but it was in the 80s and 90s, and I converted that money into buying the UFO books and the Crowley. So, but yeah, that's probably how it started or whatever.
I'm wondering how, like I've always been on the lookout for some sort of rare book, but how do you know when you walk into a bookshop? Like, do you have to spend hours and hours learning, which cover, what marking? Like how did you educate yourself in terms of that?
Yeah, any way you can through passages in other books. There are people like Keith Richmond with Wiser Antiquarian Books. His database has been mined by everybody. I mean, there are these people that are very knowledgeable, and if you can, and Danny and I had a guy, we called him the dealer. He would show up with his books and sell them to us, and one day, Danny's wife at the time said, "Why don't you try to find where he's getting these books from?" Why didn't we think of that? And within an hour, we had figured it out. He was buying them from a guy in England, and we could see the same. He used the same descriptions and everything, so everything matched. So he was gone, and that was another source. But yeah, and I've made a lot of mistakes. Let me tell you about the best mistake or the worst mistake, the biggest mistake that Danny and I ever made was I had found I wanted this book, The King Kang King. Super, super rare. And what's so special about this book is that Crowley would, in some copies, now I think there are probably only a few copies that were ever issued, but he would do a pen drawing, and some of them even use watercolors right on the book, like on the first page or whatever on the. And so anyway, I was in Ventura in a sci-fi store looking for alien stuff, UFO books, and we got to talking to the owner, and he said he had a copy of the King Kang King. He didn't have it with him, but he was going to be bringing it to the Burbank Book Fair, and if I got there, it was mine. And but he said it's not really bound; it's the galley proofs, but it's got Crowley's writing, the marginal notations are Crowley in his hand. So I didn't know enough about books at the time to know that this is better. This is the one to get. I didn't know. So he only wanted like $350 or something, $350, I think, for it. And he offered it to Danny and I, and we both just said, well, we went out and got a beer and a sandwich and said, we'll think about it. And we figured out one of us is going to have to buy this. And so we went back and it was gone. And to this day, it's like, I've never seen a copy of the book anywhere. Neither's Danny. I mean, and this would have been this was the prize. And it didn't have the drawing, which is what the reason that we balked on it. It was like, we really want like a drawing or something, but that was a huge mistake. So that, to answer your question, yeah, there's a lot of, I've made a lot of mistakes.
Yeah. And like, I guess having someone like Danny, you can feed off each other's knowledge and learn more together, I guess.
Yeah, when we'd go to the book fairs, if I discovered something, I would kind of like make sure I got the ones I wanted first, and then let Danny know. And Danny would kind of do the same thing, but he was more humorous. He would like say things like, no reason to come over here, and there's nothing over here, and have this like sly grin on his face, and I'd rush over there. But we were friends there, and so it never affected it. So we didn't like fight over anything.
Mm.
I was happy for him to find and stuff, and I think he was probably happy for me to find stuff.
There's another fairly famous rock star Crowley collector, Jimmy Page. I'm just wondering whether you've ever had any contact with Jimmy Page or anything like that.
No, but not with him. But his daughter was a photographer for some of the Tool shoots, and so I think both of us asked her about it. And she wouldn't say much. She said he didn't discuss those books with her, or she didn't give us any information. But I'm sure his collection is supposed to be one of the best in the world.
Yeah, well, he got a very early start on it, I guess, too.
Back in the 70s. Was buying them in the 60s.
60s even.
And he was in England, where most of them were. Fortunately, LA was a good spot, too. There was a lot of, what did they say, the land of fruit and nuts or something. There was a lot of people into that kind of stuff in Los Angeles, in Southern California. So it was a good place to hunt down these things. You go to some places and you're not going to find anything. They don't even
Australia.
Well, Keith Richmond's from Australia, or he was. I think that's where he came from. I believe. I could be wrong, but I think he's Australian. So there's places that you wouldn't think. Like there was a guy called... had the Serpent's Occult book in Daytona Beach, Florida. He had amazing stuff. He had a little back in the days of mail order catalogs before the internet. So if you get a mail order catalog, you can study it, and you learn a lot that way too. That's how I learned a lot about the UFO stuff. I guess I shouldn't be calling them UFO books. They have a different term nowadays.
No, keep calling them UFO books.
You can't teach an old dog new tricks.
This is a safe space for UFO.
Right.
Yeah.
This reminds me of something I read in Jacques Vallée's journals, Forbidden Knowledge, about him going on the lookout for very rare first editions, magical books in Paris. And he went to one of these auctions. And then later he was returning home on the subway, on the metro. And he saw a little old lady that he had seen on that auction, holding on her hands, protected by some cloth or something, a very rare magical book that she had paid 1 million francs for it. And this lady was just, almost dressed like a pauper, and riding the subway instead of going on a limousine, and carrying this incredibly rare occult book. So that's interesting to see what kind of people end up owning these sorts of occult lore.
Well, she may have been affiliated with with Crowley or some member of one of those fraternal orders. She may have been I don't know. There's all kinds of different ways that that you come across those books.
You talk about one of the first places you moved, I think in LA. When you moved in, all the shelves were filled with occult kind of things, and you actually have a bit of a nightmare that you might have missed out on what might have been on those shelves.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that. Where was it? Oh, yeah. Okay, that's when I first moved to this house in mid-Wilshire area. And my room had all these empty bookshelves. But when I saw the person, I mean, when I was renting, just, signing that lease or whatever, all the books were in there and they were all occult stuff. Now, this goes way back to like early 80s. And I was like, well, first of all, I was kind of freaked out by them. I mean, not like I was, scared or anything, but it was just that they were unusual to see all those. It was all baffling to me. And yeah, and it's like, and then when I moved out of the place, those shelves were filled with my books of the same type of material after like 15 years or something.
Something
So
about
yeah,
that house.
but yeah, it was like troubling. Like, I wonder what, and it was some doctor who had it. And I was like, there must have been some amazing stuff there. I mean, but I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
So.
In terms of like the UFO books, did you have an interest in UFO book or the UFO topic before you started collecting those, or did they lead to the interest?
No, I did have an interest in it. Yeah, I had an interest going back to my childhood, even in Southern Illinois, and the case that really got me interested was it was a cattle mutilation case in Piedmont, Missouri, that was investigated, and there were like clippings on the news where they showed the ground where flies wouldn't go near the carcass, the typical mute situation. And it was a really cool. There was a lot of weird things that happened in that little town and it was near Scott Air Force Base, but I got interested in it, so that was first before the books. And when I first started getting the books, I would buy the crappiest copies I could without dust jackets or ones that had like writing in, because I just wanted the information. I wasn't a collector at that point. So after like having, I don't know, 30 or 40 of those, I decided like, well, I want I want these in like really not, great condition. I'm going to be a collector. And I said, I was like, could I get one of the best collections? Could I do that? Is that something I could do? It was like just a weird thought. So from that point on, like I didn't want any of the ones that were crappy, but you have to buy those if they're really rare and hope that you'll find a better one at some other point. You have to take what you get. So I've done that too. I bought the same book, and this for Crowley as well. I've bought the same book 4 or 5 times just to get the best copy or whatever. And then when you finally get the one that's like, I don't think I'll find one better than this. So then you've got the one.
So did the Crowley book collecting kind of come out of the UFO book collecting?
I think so, yeah. I mean, I was doing a screenplay about Tibet, writing it, and actually it did get produced, but I think it was like as a student film or something. I've never seen it. But I came across Crowley in doing my research for this book about Tibet. And so one day I was in the bookstore and there was a used copy of Gems from the Equinox, which is the best of his bi-monthly magazine, The Equinox. And I started reading The Vision and the Voice in the store. And I said, it was a little out of my price range. I said, I think I need this. And so I managed to get the money and I bought it and I took it home and I started reading it. I was like fascinated by his use of words, how he used words and the descriptions of the vision and the voice, as well as some of the other stuff that he did. And so I got hooked pretty quick. But Crowley, he wrote like hundreds of books. He had over 100 printed different books. He would print everything because he inherited a lot of money. So if he just wrote a poem, whether it was good or bad, he'd just have it printed up in a deluxe, edition, beautiful copies, and there'd only be a few of them, and that's why they're so rare. There's not many of them because he privately printed all this stuff. He only had professional publishers do like his novels and maybe, and then a lot of the other stuff came later after he died. People started, publishers. Then there was like jumped on the bandwagon and said, wow, look at this little short story by Aleister Crowley. And now it's a book. And even books he didn't finish, novels that he didn't finish are printed. The Fish. It's an unfinished novel. It's halfway there, but it's a book. And you got to have it.
Did your interest, like in the Crowley books, did that then like lead to deeper interest in all the like ritual magic type things?
Yeah, but it was mainly Kenneth Grant. It was a lot of Crowley stuff is just bad poetry. I mean, I hate to say it, but to me, in my opinion, a lot of it is. And when he wants to be lucid, he can be amazingly so, and he's written some beautiful stuff. But Kenneth Grant's books to me were bewildering beyond. It was like, is this for real? But it made sense to me. Like finally, the way it wasn't mumbo jumbo anymore. Magic started to become a reality in a sense that he talked about, fluids that have medicinal properties, things, the concepts that Crowley touched upon, but in such an obscure language. But Grant took it to the next level. And then I started to become interested, like maybe, there's something to this. There's more, like there's the old thing, there's nothing, magic's fine. The only problem is it doesn't work, some people would say. But I disagree. I think it's just few people can figure out or have the time or the energy to make it work. Because it isn't like, it's neurological. It's entering a world that exists maybe in your imagination, but you project that out. So Kenneth Grant's the one that got me kind of into that. And I'm not a big practitioner or anything, especially today. I don't do much of that at all. I don't have the energy. I think very few people really have what it takes to see this through, to see it through.
Yeah. And the possible costs, I guess, of
the price to
quite
pay.
a few full-on occultists kind of seem to pay a price at the end of it all.
Well, well, those are people probably that shouldn't have been doing it. I mean,
in terms of like your interest, like sort of grew out of that book collecting. Was it similar for Danny? I mean, I don't want you to talk out of school there, but it seems like to me, when you look at Opiate and Undertow, there's a certain vibe, and then all of a sudden with Anima, it feels transformational in many ways, like almost like it is a magical working.
Yeah, I think Danny might be a little more intuitive than I am with the whole thing, but he'll surprise you every once in a while with some pretty deep thoughts on that subject. Surprises me, but he does use it to his advantage with his art. And, I might write about it, but I'm not physically putting it into place like he does.
Yeah. And in terms of like talking about your knowledge and writing about it, one of the themes that has gone through a lot of your work, both on the Tool website, right through to your novels even, is like this idea of like the glitter of the sleepers. I'm wondering whether you could talk a little bit about that.
There's not a lot because, back in the real early days, I was in this convivial society, I'll call it that, and there were some pretty unique people there, and that's how I kind of got started on some of those concepts. But it's nothing. It would be illegal to engage in that unless you were a medical examiner.
Still illegal.
So it has to remain speculative, I think, but there's a lot of hints in the old alchemical tracks. And I don't know did you read a book called The Rise? It's about Rennes le Chateau. It's probably the best book.
No, I haven't read that one. No.
It's a really good book, but there's a lot in that book as well where they get close and they're talking about these special masses, these special rituals that Sanier was performing for his wealthy clients. That yes, his money did come from trafficking in masses, but not from the common person, the little amount of money. Why would they send all their money, even if he put an ad in a newspaper? Why would they send, their money to him instead of their local guy? So, and Sanier's money came in spurts. So it wasn't something that was a constant, flow that he was trafficking, and they say he was one of the early guys to put ads in all the magazines and papers, and people would send him money. And okay, but I think he discovered something where I think he was able to show certain wealthy clients, he was able to demonstrate something for them, and that gets close to that alchemical glitter of the sleepers, dream of the dreamless stuff that you're bringing up.
Yeah.
Not a lot I can say about that, and I don't mean that to be mysterious. It's just a lot I don't know. There's a lot of gaps.
Yeah. So you basically, you read some of that in the original sources, but also you kind of had people you knew in your society who
some of these people were in the neuro center out at UCLA. These were people that pretty, and people that made DNA. I'm sorry, DMT. I meant not DNA, DMT, and they would synthesize it, and I think they did more kind of investigating than I did. Remember,
a lot of your interest about like DMT too, I'd imagine would come from, I think in Wickedest Books in the World, you wrote about how after you wrote the lyrics to the album that you recorded with Smile, that you had a series of dreams which, when you describe them, sound pure DMT, like not just like lucid dreams.
The prog record you're talking about.
The prog record.
Yeah. Well, nobody else wanted to do the lyrics, so they said, you do them. So I think I did them all in one night, except the last one, and I had a job working like as a sales clerk or something, and I wrote it down on a paper bag, but they were inspired by dreams, yeah.
Yeah, those dreams were, like I said, like pure DMT fodder. Like,
I know. That's what's scary. I still don't think about that. Like, what is that all about? Very odd. But but there's some of the old alchemical tracks and books do really seem to hint at this. So that's pretty much where it comes from.
Yeah. Just switching subjects for a bit, just when we were talking before, I was thinking in terms of like the old UFO books, and you've got like what's the Flying Saucer by Bernard Newman. Way back at the start, you have this topic of governments using the UFO topic for their own purposes. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are, like on the last decade or so of basically the whole UFO topic being governed by the government.
That Bernard Newman book, The Flying Saucer, which was the copyright's 1948, it still holds. It's almost the blueprint of what is going on today. It ends where, they did that in the book, in Newman's book, they create an alien out of body parts, and I think they take the skin from an Oriental person or something like that, and they manipulate it in a way, but it's a 6-fingered alien, and it's real similar to the alien autopsy, and they're worried that not everybody is going to still believe of this alien presence. They want this alien. They create this alien presence. The League of Scientists, Shades of Majestic 12, they do that so that man will have a common enemy from the stars and quit fighting amongst themselves. The book mentioned the beginning of the book. There's a crash of a UFO in New Mexico in the desert with the strange metals. It's stealthy. 1948. So anyway, the League of Scientists, they're trying to figure, and by the way, they get their money through like black market diamond merchants and stuff to fund these programs. So it's pretty interesting. But they're worried about the synthetics, and that's a code word in the book for like religious fundamentalists, not just skeptics, people that are skeptics, but that have their fundamentalism. And so what they need to do as a final is to show a real alien walking that is killed and witnessed by the news media and all that. So that's their final thing in the book, to convince everybody is they create this the real. So that's what we haven't had yet, right? That's like the next stage. If 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 they're following this type of a blueprint, whether it came from that book or not, if that's what's going on, I don't know. Of course, I don't know, but that's in the book. That's how everybody kind of is won over by the idea. So we'll see. You're getting close to that, aren't we?
Yeah, well, with David Grosh talking about biologics being
Yes.
retrieved, which is a strange term to use, he because it can mean pretty much anything, right? From skin tissue
Yes,
or something.
exactly.
And it also reminds me of the book Final Events by Nick Redfern, that he researched this government think tank who call themselves the Collins Elite. This think tank that started to investigate the UFO phenomenon, and they eventually reached the conclusion that it was, for lack of a better term, demonic in nature, and that it was a deception. That the idea that UFOs come from another planet or whatever, there was a deception perpetrated by these entities in order to keep us, in obscurity of the real plans. And the real plan was basically that we humans on this planet are basically cattle for them, and they feed off our souls. And all these things, it's interesting to me because you see the people that are at the forefront of this modern disclosure movement, and they mention these ideas again and again. Lou Elizondo, I think in one of his interviews, he alluded to the Collins Elite, to the idea that there were people who were like restraining his work, his alleged work at the AT program, because the people on top of him, they were convinced that the UFOs were demons. And the idea of Grosh saying, well, they found biologics, going back to Nick Redfern's book, is that the Roswell crash, according to the Collins Elite, was a deception in which the entities, using some type of like satanic alchemy, created these like chimera body or bodies in order for the U.S. government, who retrieved the bodies, to like think not only that these were actual physical entities, but also that they were like mortal, that they could be killed. So it's so wild to see all these ideas, and also the Collins Elite. They were very interested in what Aleister Crowley and Jack Parsons, who was one of Crowley's protégés, were doing, and they pretty much became convinced that Parsons with L. Ron Hubbard had pretty much created some kind of portal through their Babylon working, or when they were trying to create the Moonchild.
Yeah, the time matches really well.
The time matches really well. There are a lot of researchers who think that there's a really interesting correlation between what these guys were doing at Pasadena and the emergence of the UFO, the first UFO wave in the late 1940s and the early 1950s. So,
but the thing about demons, I mean, okay, wouldn't Albert Einstein be considered a demon if he went back to those days, or the guy that invented the TV or the computer? Would those guys be called demons? I mean,
right.
That's just a word.
That's just a word. Yeah.
It's a word. And the problem is with today, there's these I understand the idea that these crashes were intentional. They weren't really crashes. They were gifts given to us. And but they just keep, how many do we need? Because there's there's a guy, a lot of these guys running these YouTube things, they don't even know the history. They really don't know the ufological history, but they get the videos and stuff. And there was one guy, he was saying, yeah, we get these empaths, these psychics, and we project, we send a message to the aliens, and they come to the exact location, and they crash, and we get all their stuff. Like, you need it again, it's redundant, and then they just keep doing it. Finally, I think the guy said, "Why are they so stupid? Why do they keep falling for the same thing?"
Keep crushing.
And it's like, and Elizondo, when people are skeptical of him saying that this is just to get money, for these black programs, or for the government, we put out this alien thing. Send us money. We're going to need money to fight these aliens off, to investigate these aliens. And he says, no, there's a lot easier ways to do that. You don't need to concoct something like that. But the part about that scenario that he doesn't mention is that what about the wild goose chase factor? That it's not about getting money; it's about getting assets to chase something. And put all their resources into it that doesn't exist. He didn't mention that, or at least I didn't see that. I read through his book, and that's another component that needs to be that brought into if it is a deception on part of if it is a Bernard Newman flying saucer type scenario like I hinted at, or like I was speaking about, then that would be the major factor, I think. It wouldn't be about getting money. It would be about, making bad guys, whatever you want to call them, the enemy, adversary, go on a wild goose chase and put all their resources into this stuff.
Yeah,
but
I think to myself,
the whole thing about these aliens, it's sort of like the same thing that's done, we do with our gods. Humans tend to project their worst traits on these other beings. They're petty. The gods are jealous, vindictive. That's what alchemy tries to correct in humans. It's real simple. Get you down to your basics, strip away everything, get rid of all those negative aspects, and become a more perfected human being. But our gods don't seem to be that. Like I said, we just superimpose our worst things over them. And they're doing the same thing with these extraterrestrials, although they don't even call them extraterrestrials. We don't know what they are. They're non-human intelligence.
Non-human intelligences, yeah.
Whatever that could mean,
Octopus.
I mean, I saw a video the other day, and it's like they've resurrected the whole shaver story. The great, they're from the underground. That's why they're not extraterrestrials. They're not coming from out there. They're coming up out of the mountains and the water. It was the whole shaver mystery all over again.
Yeah.
I was thinking, like, in terms of, like, if it's all like government disinformation for, like, what you said, wild goose chase or whatever else reason, it's been a huge success. Like, the last 10 years it's dominated the whole UFO research scene. It's just all these revelations and whistleblowers.
Yeah.
And in the modern age of social media, there's just so many useful idiots to use in terms of, and you just feed that information out.
Well, I have brochures from UFO conventions going back to the 1960s, and the lineup, the guests, they thought that disclosure would be the next month.
Right.
I mean, and it's all the same. You have the same cast. They're just 60. And I think it was Elizondo who brought up the fact that, it was about his book. It was Dolan.
Richard Dolan?
Richard Dolan, that's who it is. He was saying that, we had that eminent book 70 years ago. Ruppelt wrote the same book pretty much. Almost, of course, it's a little flashier now, 7 years later, but we'll have to wait and see what's going to happen with this next program that we're being teased about.
Oh, the Immaculate Constellation.
And I think we'll hear about that around first week in November, maybe. We'll see what that is, if it's another whitewash. I don't know. I mean, I hope there's something good. I'm like Stanton Friedman. He goes, even if they clobber us, I don't care. I just want to know what's
It's the dubious sources that are all like releasing the information, like Schellenberger and all these people.
yeah.
Like, if we're going to get disclosure through people like that, we're in trouble, I think.
Yeah, and it's also like I mean, disclose what? People like start with preconceived notion that like the gray aliens, they don't even like question if they're real or not. It's where did they come from or what are they doing? They just skip over the first step completely. And it's like I heard this was not recently, but there was a guy explaining the sleep paralysis thing to a reporter. This was a skeptic, obviously, about the whole alien abduction thing going the route of sleep paralysis. He did a very good job. He painted the picture, he laid down all the information. And when he was done talking, the reporter said, "So what do they want?" And he just looked dumbfounded and he said, "Nothing. They're not real." The guy just he couldn't grasp it.
Yeah. In terms of
Well, it's like the Chinese curse. May you live in interesting times. So,
and you've got a fair history of like you've written for Dark Law about heading out to Area 51. I was just wondering, do you still do that, or is that too dangerous now? Or
and I wouldn't think it's dangerous. I think it's just passe, more or less. But it's a lot of the trips weren't to. I never went out there other than maybe the first couple of times to see like what's going on out here. A lot of it was just to get out of LA, and it's really neat out there. I mean, with all the starries, you don't get those skies anymore because Las Vegas is too big now, so it takes up a lot of the ambient light from Los Angeles. You don't get the same scenery, but and then when I first started going out there back in 1989. You could actually look down on the base. You had to do this like 45-minute hike up to a ridge, but you could sit there and you're just looking right down at the runway, part of the runways and everything. And so I always had a good time going out there. We'd go out there and have space picnics, and uh, if anything were to show up, that was a bonus. You didn't have to have that, but I did see some pretty interesting things out there that I will say were almost certainly experimental aircraft or drone technology. This was in the 90s. Yeah, in the 90s. And stuff that, it didn't seem alien. It didn't seem that far out, but whatever alien is, I mean.
I remember reading in your Dark Lord essay how you almost described seeing some kind of almost like an insect-like drone.
Yes, that was in this guy I was with out there. It's so dark back in those days. You couldn't even see your hand in front of your face, on a moonless night when we'd go out there. But he just kept thinking there was something in his margarita, which was in a big plastic cup. And he kept like flinching. And so finally I took my flashlight over to it and I shined my flashlight in it. And there was something in there, kind of a matte gray color. It looked like almost like a dragonfly. But I didn't get to look at it very long, but it did look artificial. Because as soon as he saw it, he threw the glass up into the air, or the cup. And I spent maybe a half hour or longer with a flashlight trying to find the thing. I never could find it. But it was very weird looking. Now, I don't know what it was. Maybe it was a weird insect. But one time when we were out there, and it was on a Saturday night, it's date night, and I was out there with a doctor and his wife, and we were on one of the ridges. We had really good sight of the airspace above the base, and nothing was happening, which is pretty common out there. And most of the time, nothing does happen. But there's always something crazy in the sky, like a big, a fireball goes by, or there's always something out there, it seems, out in the middle of the desert. But anyway, this night, we were just sitting there, and it's like, okay, well, it's Saturday night. I don't expect they're going to be testing anything tonight, because even they have their, their system. They don't do that. And then for some reason, he just shot off some bottle rockets, just because out of boredom, just shoot up some bottle rockets in the desert. And then I must have just minutes later, the base lit up, and all these ground launched magnesium flares started going up. I mean, across the entire base, like from one end to the other. And we can't actually see the base because it's hidden by a ridge, but we can see the airspace above. And all these flares are going up. Okay. And the helicopter starts buzzing around. A Hercules appears out of nowhere, is circling the air. Jets appear in 4 quadrants of the sky. There's all this activity going on. And the doctor says, "What's that green satellite doing?" And I said, "Green satellite?" And I look up, and it was like you'd see a satellite, but it was kind of this spectral green color. By the time I really got my eyes on it, the thing was a lot bigger, and it was a green plasma surrounding some type of craft or drone that was, if I can remember, it was like a whitish silver color, kind of a diamond. And this thing was just coming so fast. It just went right over us and then disappeared behind a ridge. As it was happening, the flares had stopped, but whenever it disappeared, the flares came back on. So I assume it was some type of, really fast experimental military, or even a drone.
Like the Aurora, the infamous legendary Aurora project?
It didn't seem to be quite as big as what a lot of descriptions of the Aurora are, but it might have been something like that. It was, all I can say is, from being the size of, like, you see a satellite to flying overhead was in seconds. I mean, it was so fast. Now, whether it was coming from, whether it took off from the base or if it was just returning from somewhere, that I don't know. But it's more likely, I think, that it didn't take off from the base and just go do a big loop, that it was coming from elsewhere. This was a long time ago. That's my best recollection. It's probably, I can't remember how I wrote about it in the book, but that was probably more accurate. But
How early on did
it was a good night out there. It was a good night. I mean, that was like, wow,
It's worth the trip.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's like, I think we probably lit some fireworks a few other occasions after that, just to see if anyone would, to try to correlate, like all that happened because he sent some bottle rockets up. But a lot of times out there, though, it's just, just the scenery. Get out of Los Angeles. But to answer your question, that was a long way to answer. I haven't been out there for a while.
How early on did you and Danny get arrested?
That was in the 90s, and that was, I don't remember the exact year, but it was when they took away, there was the land grab.
The land grab, yeah.
And so what had happened is that I used to hike up to that Freedom Ridge where you could see the base. And so Danny wanted to see the base, of course. And they had just marked some of those Dreamland interceptors or whatever people, those early guys, Glenn Campbell and those people like that, they had marked the trail with just like yellow and pink ribbons on the Joshua trees. But when I went out there, those were hard to see, and I didn't want to like veer off into the restricted zone because it's not marked by anything but these like orange posts, and they have these ammonia sensors that it would be easy to go over, and anyway, so I took this gold metallic tape that was really highly reflective, and I would wrap that around the Joshua trees. And I was fairly recently out there and just did this. And then when Danny and I start hiking up the ridge, we didn't know about the land grab. It had just occurred like days prior, so we had no idea. It didn't look right. All my stuff was gone. Well, of course they're going to take it down anyway, but it just did not look right. So I stopped. Danny kept walking a little higher up, and I finally went up to join him. Like, again, it's really dark. And we didn't hear anything until we heard a voice right in our ear. Gentlemen, you're going to jail.
Jesus Christ.
So all these headlights come on from these Jeeps, and these people all have their automatic weapons. We're down on the ground, and it was really cold out there in the high desert. It was in April. And so we were more concerned about, like, can we put our hands on the hoods to warm up, because it was really cold. They had us down on the ground. They searched our stuff. They go, I don't think you guys are Iraqi spies, and we didn't have any cameras. We probably just had beer or something. We were going to go up there and drink beer, but so they called the sheriff or the deputy from the nearest town, which is about 45 miles away, and they said, yeah, he's going to be pissed because it's like 3 a.m. or something. He's not going to be happy to see you. But when the guy actually got out there, he was on our side. He was like saying, what am I supposed to write? How do they know they're trespassing? How do I know they're trespassing? And then another group of these security people arrived. They took him over to the side and I guess said something to him. And then he came back and said, okay, I'm not going to take you to jail, but I'm going to write you a ticket. I remember him looking up at one of the security guys and said, where am I supposed to say they are? Because, this was back when it didn't exist. He said, Whiskey Hill Road. So that's what's on. I still have the ticket. It says Whiskey Hill Road. And I think we kind of it was Tools to blame for this in a way, because they were rehearsing and kept Danny late. And we didn't get the early start. If I had got an earlier start on this trip, I might have gone to the Alien, the little place in Rachel, and found out about, the land grab. They would have known about it. But we got out there real late, went right up there, and walked right into their trap. I will say that the guy was pretty nice to us. He wasn't, it wasn't too hardcore.
When you first had the voices, were you a bit scared for your life, or
startled? And then when the Jeep headlights, like there were a couple of them, at least 2, they all came on with the lights, and we saw that we were surrounded. And I didn't think they were going to kill us, but I thought maybe we'd go to jail that night.
I also remember in a section in that essay about you waking up inside your tent, feeling very groggy.
That was on a different occasion,
okay.
Of course. And what happened that night was my friend and I, we had just we're real close to the perimeter, closest I've ever been. I mean, we're right there. And I think they would call this little landmark Campfire Hill. I think that's what they named it. But it was just like you're as close as you can get to not being over. And so everything's good. He set his tent up. I set my tent up. Open up a beer. We're gonna have a beer, drinking the beer, and next thing I remember, I'm inside my tent, and my friend is entering the tent. I look up and he says, "You're gonna be sick." And right when he said that, I had this like metallic taste in my mouth, and he was like holding a bag, and I threw up, and I was feeling really sick for a while. And then after that, we just went outside, and everything was kind of normal, and we didn't talk about it, or anything. And it was like, and then I read something about some pilots that went out there, and they were in the same area, and they were gassed, and they thought they were gassed, and it was like because maybe they knocked you out while they did their test, because the tests don't take that long. And it was about the right time for that. That's the only thing we could think of was that's what happened. Or, I was thinking maybe even they get bored out there, the security people. So they might be just, they clowning around with spraying something, some kind of something that'll knock you out. But yeah, it was weird. I don't really know what happened, but I'm going to assume that somehow we got gassed, but I don't remember anything about, going from my lawn chair into being in the tent. And it's just another one of those weird things.
You didn't
That was like
find
really a long time ago. That was even before Danny days.
you didn't find any new like scar near
No, I
your
didn't find anything except a
earlobe.
scorpion. There was a scorpion in my in the tent,
Mm.
and I'm an arachnophobe, so I'm real cautious. No spiders, scorpions going to get in my tent. I mean, I have a drill that I do to make sure that doesn't happen. So if it was a security guy or something that put us in there, he probably was more careless. But there was a scorpion in the tent. That's all I found, which was
Do any
horrible.
of your experiences, did they contribute at all to the song Rosetta Stone? When I heard that song, I just felt very Blair, that's all.
No, that's all Maynard. He may have I don't know. He might have been thinking about me or a lot of other people that went out there. But that's another story because I was out there with another person. I don't want to name these people's their names just in case, but we were out there to film uh, video footage for Rosetta Stone when they played it live to be projected on the screen. And what we were going to film was that bus that takes the people to the base. It comes and goes. It's kind of a weird looking grayish white bus. I know where it's parked. It's parked behind a gas station in Alamo. But anyway, so we go out to film, and this person's got the camera, and I'm driving Adam's Jeep. Adam wasn't there, but I'm driving his Jeep. I had access to it, and we're racing along on this dirt track, and this bus is just kicking up this plutonium laden dust everywhere, and we're like racing, and the guy's actually trying to like run us off the road, and he almost did. But prior to that happening, what's really funny is we're going down the Groom Lake Road, which is another graded dirt track, and I'm going about 45 miles an hour, something like that. And there's no sign that says the road's washed out because I think it was too soon. But I'm just moving along, and all of a sudden there's this jolting thud. The rear axle of the Jeep, the road collapsed on me, and we just made it. I was going fast enough just to make it, and then so we stop, and there's about I don't know, maybe a 6-foot hole in the ground, the whole side of the road, and you can't go off the road because it's too steep there. I mean, if you try to, you'd roll. So I took photos of it. We did a newsletter, and we had like all the piping and everything. I got real close. We had the numbers on the pipe and everything. And so then we went and did our filming of the bus, which was a little bit of an adventure, but kind of cool. So then coming back, we have like, wow, there's only that one way back to get onto the road. So half of it's gone, but half of it's still there. But we know that if we go over it, it's going to collapse. But what else are we going to do? So then we see like coming towards us are the security personnel, and they're closing in on us. And so we're kind of thinking that I said, well, should we go for it? And the person like said, yeah, and started doing the Indy Jones theme, kind of humming that along. And I backed up pretty far, like to get up as much speed as possible. And we shot over that thing, and the same thing happened. The rear axles hit, just huge thump, and we stop and get out and we look down. The whole road's gone now, both sides. The sheer drop off. It was kind of crazy. And but so here comes we're looking at it, and here comes the security Jeeps coming, and I'm thinking this could be bad. And so we quickly got a flashlight out, and we're waving, like stop, and I have the flashlight. It's in the daytime. I still have the flashlight out, and the security guy just stops right in front of where the hole is and just gets out. And he's just looking at it. We're on the other side, just standing there like, hi. And they're on their side. And then, so we left, and I don't know if we camped out or if we stayed at the Alien. They had a little trailer or something back there. But the next morning we went back, and they had the whole crew out there, the road graders, and they were repairing it so that they could bring the bus back. Because the bus would never be able to bring anybody into the base at, that hole there. It's all documented, but all those newsletters of, whenever there would be a new web provider or host or whatever, they'd switch sites. They wouldn't bother to take the newsletters. I guess they didn't know they were archived. So all the ones with the photos and everything and the flash animation, and I don't know, somebody might have it. I don't have it.
Yeah, the U.S. government probably has a pretty big file.
Well, it's true. They did some of the stuff. They do archive that stuff, but not for nefarious reasons. I think they just, that's just something they do. But I don't know. But we had really good, clear color photos of the hole, and you could read the serial numbers on the pipes. That the under, and then But yeah, there's always something going on out there. There's always something weird. I call it's like a Twilight Zone out there. But now there's so many people going out there. They used to say like, "Oh, there's lots of tourists." When I was going out there, I never saw anybody. I was the only one out there usually. I mean, maybe once or twice I saw like another guy that was climbing up the hill that would not say he had anything to do with UFOs, that he was a ghost hunter, a ghost town hunter, and give me this big spiel, and then we get to the top and start talking. Then all of a sudden, he'd rattle off this. I go, "You're chasing UFOs." Because I just didn't know who you are. Like, afraid to talk to me. But a lot of fun out there. We had a lot of good times. And see, we were talking earlier, I think before Greg and I, and that would be like the newsletters. See, we all it was a family with Tool. They would go out there too. Danny would go out there. So those days are gone.
In terms of like some of these crazy experiences you're having, with your recent novels that you wrote, like how much did you plow some of your experiences in? So, reading about some of the growing up in the small town aspects, I felt almost sounded autobiographical in nature. I'm just wondering how much you put your own experiences into those novels.
Probably mainly just characters and location, for the most part. In the first book, definitely, but the things that happen, obviously, I didn't go into an old Victorian house and all of a sudden I was in the future or something. None of that happened.
If you said it did, I would believe you.
The mowing the lawn and stuff did happen.
How long were those books like gestating in your mind? Like, did you feel that you were writing them in your head for a while, or?
Well, I didn't plan on writing 3. I didn't plan on the trilogy. It was just going to be the one, and then there was more to do, I guess. So I combined them because a lot happens. There's a lot going on. I'm doing the 4th one right now, and I'm not going to really say what it's about because it's a different twist on it, but it has a lot to do with UFOs, crash retrievals, stuff like that. But it's fiction. But I come at it from a different angle completely, though, than what you'll see, what you see on YouTube and the news. And all that.
For those who haven't read the books yet, you should. But they touch on a lot of different aspects of esoterica, from like a multiverse type, seeing visions of a different world, and like artifacts out of place, through to UFOs, all those kinds of things. So obviously it comes from your own interest in all those areas. Yeah.
But the ideas were the protagonists, it's how they're affected by chance encounters with some of this technology from beings that lived on this earth a long, long time ago, that their technology was more advanced than ours is today. And it centers around the last surviving member of this group who lived into the 1960s, and he cryptically left behind the story of these people and DNA. They're not alien or anything like that, but they're not human either. But they're like a notch up from humans, what we call humanity plus, and so they leave behind their story, or he left behind his story for others to discover. And that's how the books kind of play out.
Interesting.
if I give you the synopsis as they've taught me to do, write it on. If you can't write it on a matchbook head, then it's not worth anything. So that's the boiled down version of it. There's a lot more to it.
They're a pretty wild ride.
And some of it is similar to. Did you read the Russian novel Roadside Picnic? Have either one of you read that?
No, but I have heard about it. Jacques Vallée
Yes.
refers to it heavily.
And it's about these aliens that visited the Earth at some point in the past. They didn't interact with humans or anything, but they just did their thing, just here maybe for hours or something. But their litter that they left behind, I think Jacques Vallée would compare it to like, somebody, what we might leave behind at a picnic, like batteries or something, whatever. But what's left behind, people are after. They don't know how it works. They don't know what the stuff is. They have weird names for it, like black sparks and half empties and whatever. But they sell the stuff on the black market, and it affects the people that buy them or chance upon, or get access to it in weird ways. Well, there's a little bit of that in the novels that I did in one, and I hadn't read the book and anything about it at the time of reading it, so I didn't get the idea. But mine is more, they're not aliens, but it's technology that people don't understand from these humanity plus people. So there's a little bit of a kind of similarity in some aspects, although there's a lot more in the novel.
It's interesting.
Just that. That's a little, because when I came up with some of these things, I'd come up with a description, but I didn't know what it would do, and I don't want to know, and I still don't know.
Right.
They're just described, and what they do. I don't know what they do, if anything, or what purpose they serve, but I put it in there, and like I said, I'll never know what they do. These things, some of them.
It's interesting. Reminds me of there's this short story that became a science fiction movie, The Last Mimsy. It's about objects from the far future that somehow arrive to our time, and they are like toys, and some kids manage to find them and they start playing with them, and through interacting through these alien artifacts, they start changing their consciousness. They start becoming smarter. They start almost developing like telepathic abilities and all that. And then there's a movie, Arrival, which is incredible. The idea about learning an alien language that somehow changes your consciousness and your way to perceive time.
Right.
So all these ideas are starting to, being played around in our pop culture, and maybe there's something to it.
Yeah, there's so much science fiction out there that, I don't read a lot of science fiction at all. I never have, but who knows what's in some of those obscure sci-fi books, the ideas in some of them. My idea was, when I did my trilogy, I didn't want to write science fiction about spacecraft or ray guns or all that stuff that's in most of them. My idea, the premise was, what if somebody from the past, like Middle Ages or something, were to materialize in a Walmart? How fascinating would that be for them? And what would they think of the toys of the real, actual, would they know that there was a real one? I mean, I wanted to do it that way, that like, even like mundane things to maybe these people would be fascinating to us because of the technology, not to mention the effect it could have. And that's similar to the Roadside Picnic, is that some of these things have a real effect on the people that obtain them. They don't know what it is, but it does affect them in profound ways.
I feel like we've lost that a bit in sci-fi. There's so much what they call hard science fiction. They want to write about all the nuts and bolts of the spacecraft, and it has to obey physical laws. What I always find interesting in the sci-fi is when they go for concepts and out there ideas and trying to think outside the box.
Yeah. The thing that bothers me is that how it becomes outdated. Like, you try to, like you look at I was never a fan of like Star Trek.
Mm.
I haven't seen Star Wars. I saw the first one. I've only seen one or two episodes of Star Trek. But it's like, they have the teleporter, right? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
But some of the other stuff looks like 1930s type. It's like they always it's hard. It's so hard to predict really what's going to happen.
I remember reading Arthur C. Clarke's Childhoods, and there's one stage where he stows away on the spacecraft and he takes like rolls and rolls of film so that he can film the alien planet kind of thing, and it seems so archaic now.
Exactly. I mean, that's the pitfall of trying to do stuff like that. It's like, it's kind of not, you're not going to get it probably. You're going to miss something and it's not going to look good. So I wrestled with that when I was, with the books I did. I didn't want anything in there like that. My weapon was, and again, I don't read hardly any science fiction, so who knows what's out there. But in the last book, Grumble's Star, the only time a weapon appears, and what the weapon does is it doesn't give you a wound. It doesn't do anything physical. What it does is changes your mind. You become on the side of the person, of your adversary. You just become on their side if you're hit by this thing. And that's a different approach to a weapon,
It's kind of like the things that the First Earth Battalion were trying to accomplish.
You're going to tell me, because I haven't read these books, that it's already exists.
No, but this is real. The First Earth Battalion was this real group in the army that there's the whole thing about the men who stare at goats and all that.
Oh yes, I know. Yeah,
so the First Earth Battalion, they were trying to find methods to win wars without using methods of killing, like going there and maybe I don't know, brainwashing, but always like trying to win over the enemy in some capacity.
Seems like a better approach to me.
For sure, yeah.
But then you just keep going back and forth. I shoot you and you're on my side, then you shoot me, and now I'm not, and it just keeps.
Yeah, forever.
So then I just have to go get a conventional weapon and put it in. But yeah.
When do you think the next novel will be?
Well, I'm on chapter
done?
4 now. So I'm going to guess. I'm not even sure when we're in the spring, maybe. Our spring on this hemisphere.
6 months.
Something like that, yeah. I got these some keyboards, so I get distracted. Like I said, I don't know anybody here. I don't. I'm a pretty simple life here, but I have these keyboards that I'm like kind of distract me sometimes from actually putting more time into the book. But I think in 6 months it should be done for sure. It's a weird one, this one, because I don't have a real outline like with the other ones. I'm just kind of going for it. Write some, and then I don't know what's going to happen in chapter 5 right now. I have no idea. But
interesting.
A little bit of that, letting it come from somewhere else, like acting as the antenna.
Yeah, it's like, and it keeps you up at night too. It's like, then I'll get the ideas. I go, wow, that's a crazy idea, but I like it. And I'll go write it down. I don't know. Are people reading books anymore anyway? I don't know.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. It is tough. Like, Miguel will testify when you're writing an article for the Grail, and it's all very interesting, but then you think, how many people are actually going to read it? They're all just going to be on social media, watching a video instead rather than reading an article.
I know, and the stuff that he writes is really well done. I mean, I'm amazed.
Oh, thank you.
The level of the thought process, and how you're thinking outside the box for sure. The Daily Grail site is not like a lot of these YouTube you know, nonsense. It's out there. It's a lot more serious. But like you said, that doesn't necessarily equate to readers or whatever.
Yeah. It's a tough old time. But I think you just got to do what you feel like you got to do.
Yeah.
Same with you.
And some of this stuff gets discovered later on. Some of these that record that I did in 1977. More people are listening to it now than ever listened to it. So
when you were talking about your keyboards before, you mean like synth keyboards?
Yeah.
Yeah. Still playing.
Yeah, I was working. I was trying to relearn "Close to the Edge." Yes, that today on it. I remember I used to play parts. Now I'm not that good, so I would, I'd slosh through it. But I just love to see how the chord progressions and how I'm fascinated by that. And admittedly, it's pretty complicated. But so that's what I did today. I was just sort of like, I didn't write today. Other than something, no, I didn't write anything today. So I just worked on that, and then nobody will hear it. I just play it for myself, then I'll forget about it, and whatever. It's either that or go down and play video poker.
Well, we look forward to seeing the next novel, and as always, you can catch Blair's writing on the Tool site. Still doing newsletters? Yeah,
we do the newsletters, but they want it to be that people have to. It's for like Tool Army members, subscribers. I guess would be the same thing. The newsletters are so.
Yeah,
it's kind of
not as big an audience.
Yeah,
we'll have to get you writing for the Grail again, doing some articles.
But the newsletters are a little different because, like I said, I don't. The adventures that we used to do with the band and all that. We don't do that anymore. So it's a different approach.
You have to plow it all into the novel, then the next novel. Do you have a title?
I not really.
Not really?
I really don't. I mean, I have an idea that if I had to, but I don't like it enough that I'm going to say it or call it the title yet. I don't think it's not it.
Yeah.
But if I can come up with something else, it would be sufficient.
Yeah, fair enough.
But,
well, we look forward to seeing it. Thanks
very much. You'll probably be the one.
Yeah, I might be editing it.
You're the only one I trust.
I might get first look.
Cool.
Thanks for chatting to us today, Blair. I appreciate it.
It was my pleasure. Thanks, and it's really great to meet you.
Yeah,
and
likewise. It was a lot of fun.
We should have you back sometime just to chat just general ufology stuff, because I think people don't appreciate how much deep knowledge you've got of the history of it and all that. So maybe we'll get you back sometime to do that.
I would love to. It's been a lot of fun.